That's 1 Samuel 17. So everyone's brought a Bible. Or an iPad. Or an iPhone as time goes on. The world has changed. I heard someone say once that they like the rustle of pages. They used to love that sound. And I remember being in a really, really dark church and everyone went, turn to page, so and so. And everybody's face lit up like they were telling horror stories in a tent. From all the iPads. Ooh. Okay, so 1 Samuel 17. It's actually quite a big section, so we'll skim the first bit and then we'll read the next bit. So this is where the Philistines, the big presence in the area at the time, come up against the Israelites at the valley of Elah in Soar. I don't know if you pronounce the H, maybe. And up until that point, they've been there for about 40 days. And so as they arrived, their champion, if you like, which you'll have heard of, is Goliath. You'll have all heard the story of David and Goliath. Their champion, Goliath, has been coming out day after day, sort of bigging it up. He's been there saying, if we beat you, if your champion can come out and defeat me, we will become your servants. But if I beat your champion, then you will become our servants. And every day after this, because he was a bit of a monster, a bit of a grizzly bear of a man, then, people were frightened and nobody wanted to face him sort of one-on-one. And so we're going to pick up the story a little bit further down in chapter 17. And we're going to pick it up. Now, David is one of many brothers, and he's been going backwards and forwards to the front to bring food. He's not in the battle, but he's got 3 brothers that are actually in the Israelite army at the time. And his father, so we're going to pick it up where it says, and Jesse said to David his son, take your brothers an ephah of this parched grain and these 10 loaves, and carry them quickly to your brothers at the camp. Also take these 10 cheeses to the commander of the 1,000. See how your brothers fare and bring some token from them. Now Saul and the brothers of all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. So David rose up early next morning, left the sheep with a keeper, took the provisions, and went as Jesse had commanded him, and he came to the encampment as the host going forth to the battleground shouted the battle cry. And Israel and the Philistines put the battle in array, army against army. David left his packages in the care of the baggage keeper and ran into the ranks and came and greeted his brothers. As they talked, behold, Goliath, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, came forth from the Philistine ranks and spoke the same words as he had before, but this time David heard them. And all of the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, terrified. And the Israelites said, have you seen this man who has come out? Surely he has come out to defy Israel. And the man who kills him, the king will enrich with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free from taxes and service in Israel. And David said to the men standing by them, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine, and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the men told him, thus shall it be done for the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his eldest brother, heard what he said to the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And he said, why did you come here? With whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your presumption and evilness of heart, for you came down that you might see the battle. And David said, what have I done now? Was it a not harmless question? And David turned away from Eliab to another, and he asked the same question, and again the men gave the same answer. When David's words were heard, they were repeated to Saul, the king, and he sent for him. David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of this Philistine. Your servant will go out and fight with him. I'm just going to stop it there. Now, I wanted to talk about serving. Now, I know what people think when you say the word serving, because you just think to yourself, that's not very interesting at all. Yeah, it's not very encouraging. If outside of Christian circles, when you say, no, you can, come and love God, and you can be a servant of God, people go, no, not really. I don't really fancy that much. It's not really an inspiring thing to want to be a servant. Because we think in our brains, a servant is that guy with a napkin over his arms and a sharp suit, going to the Lord and going, yes, Lord, would you like another cup of tea? It's not really. So what I did is I looked up the definitions of the word servant. And so a servant, it says, by the modern definition in the dictionary, a person who waits on another. So people wouldn't be out of place to be thinking that. I mean, really, that's really what it says, a person who waits on another. So I looked a bit further. I looked at service, because obviously that's really what you're doing as a servant. And this makes a bit more sense. An act of helpful activity to do someone a service. While I was at it, I looked up what a bondservant was. Now, a bondservant is another name for a slave. And so it says, a person who is the property of and wholly subject to another, a bondservant. A person entirely under the domination of some influence or person. Now, you can imagine that. You could be in service. You could be somebody's servant in a big house. You could be in service to somebody. Well, that counts for a lot of things that we do. And you could be a slave to something. Now, people are a slave to heroin. Yeah. They are completely dominated by heroin and things like that. So, we've talked before about this ultimate relationship and how we're designed for worship and things like that. And we're also designed for service. It doesn't sound terribly inspiring, and people say, no, I'm my own man or my own woman, but we are designed for service. So, I'll show you what I mean. Because we serve things all the time. We serve money. And we don't like to think of it, but we do. We serve money. We talk all the time. This place takes money. It costs money to buy food. It costs money to pay the bills. It costs money to raise children. And we do things in active, helpful service to money to achieve those aims. And we wait on money. If we haven't got any money, we've got to wait for money to come through at the end of the week or the end of the month till we get paid. We are in service, and we are servants of money. We are in service to our job. I do helpful activities to help my boss, and I wait on what they want to do, and they tell me what they're planning, and they go, we're not doing that yet, just wait and we'll let you know. So we're in the way. Our dreams and ambitions. If you want to climb the north face of the Eiger, you have to do lots of things in the meantime. You have to be in service to your skills, and you have to do lots of exercises to make sure that you're strong enough, and you've got to provide money and all sorts of things like that. You're in service and you do activities to achieve your dreams and your ambitions. And we are in service to God. We do things that are helpful to God. We do things every day that we think that we're in service to God, and we're service, and we wait on Him. We wait on Him peacefully, sometimes in our own time, in the quiet, and we literally, physically just wait on Him. But we're in service and we serve lots of things. And the thing is, because we serve things, we pick up attributes of what we serve. We've talked before about becoming what you worship. Yeah. You don't become what you serve, but you certainly pick up traits and attributes. You've all been at those barbecues where you're talking to an old friend. You say, "Oh, what are you doing now?" And they go, "Oh, I'm at Honda still." And you go, "Oh, right. What's it like there?" And they'll bore you to death. They'll say, "Oh, do you know they're a great company to work for? They've got a new range of cars coming out in the summer. We've never had one recall." They've taken on attributes of the company that they now serve. And we do it all the time. I mean, we take on attributes of our dreams. We become, you take on attributes of your climbing. It's how you dress. I do, combat sports, and I wear combat sport outfits and things like that. I've taken on attributes of the things that we do. I carry a Bible with me everywhere I go. I've taken on the attributes of the God that I serve. And we do. I mean, that's the point. There are good attributes and bad attributes to take on. The good attributes, we are in service to God. Yeah. And we take on nice things. We take on His joy, His grace, His mercy, His kindness. Hopefully, we're bringing on these attributes. But there's bad attributes you can pick up. Now, it's a show of hands thing. Has anybody seen Pretty Woman?
How can you not?
Okay, so a few people have seen Pretty Woman. Okay, so the scene I'm thinking of is when, well, if you haven't seen it, Pretty Woman is a story played by Julia Roberts, about a lady of the night, shall we say. And this Julia Roberts, she was dressed in her lady of the night clothes, and she goes into a posh shop on Rodeo Drive in America.
Yeah.
And she comes up against the steward in the shop, the lady who's working in the shop. And she's not very nice to her. She comes in and she's looking at the dress and she says, "Can I help you?" And she says, "Yes, how much is this dress?" And she says, "You can't afford it." It's like that. And she goes, "But I've got money." And she goes, "We haven't got anything here from you." Because it's a posh shop on Rodeo Drive. And because it's posh, she was posh.
Yeah.
Because it was exclusive, she was exclusive.
Yeah.
And because only a few people can afford it, she thought, well, she can't.
Yeah.
She'd taken on the attributes of the store that she'd worked in. She gets her own back later on, for people who haven't seen it, you know. If you're feeling sorry for her, Julia Roberts does get her own back in it. So, when you take on the attributes, you change. It becomes easy to sort of go from there and to sort of to let it slip. And this is where I really want to sort of be with you on it, right? Because we talked and we gave the description of what becoming a slave is. You know? What becoming a slave is. And it's very easy to become a slave to the things that we serve. Now, you know people that have become a slave to money. They're not interested in going out, doing activities, going to the pictures with you, walking in the park with you. When the minute they get up, they're concerned about money. The minute they go to bed, they're concerned about money. Every waking in money is the most important thing. Every waking moment is about the collection and the reaching and the getting of money and bringing it into their life. And they resemble it. You know, they've become a slave to it. They worry about it. They struggle about it all the time. The same with a job. You know, the same type of jobs. Where you get up, you're there at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're there all the way till 8 o'clock in the evening, they want you to do half-day Saturdays, you're working overtime for free, you really feel that you're a slave to that. We don't have it too bad in this country. I mean, in China, there are factories where there is a queue of people waiting for your job. Yeah. And the minute you take time off for the sick or for a holiday, they literally just let you go and someone else takes your place. They really have become... You know, in case you think you've got it bad, they really have become a slave in their environment. They sleep there and everything. You know, there's some really bad situations going on in the world. You can become a slave to your dreams. If you want something too badly, think of all those, let's take young girls that go to Hollywood. They think they're going to make it. They'll do anything to make it. You know, they've become a slave to their ambitions, their dreams. And here's the one. Slave to God. We were singing in the song, "Let me give you everything." Yeah. We start giving everything to God. We start thinking the minute we wake up and the minute we go to sleep, we're trying to get closer to God all the time. When we don't realise it, we become a slave to God. Yeah. But what's wrong? I mean, he's got no bad points. Well, what's wrong with being a slave to God? And you know that this has happened to you, because what happens is we were talking the other week. If you're going home and thinking, this Christian life's a bit of hard work, and you're leaving God on the doorstep, and then when you go up, you're getting God picking him back up and go right back to back to war again as you're walking out the door, it's really easy to slip into that slave to God. But God doesn't want you to be his slave. He hasn't got that plan for your life. Because if he had that plan for your life, the clouds would open up, his big face would come down, and he'd go, "I am God, follow me." And every person on this earth would do everything. We'd have statues to him. You know, we would be bringing things to the altar for him. A whole world would be designed to be a slave to God. So he obviously doesn't want that. And I can prove it. Because when I started to love God, when I started to serve God, I got paid. I got blessed. I got given things. My life changed. I was given, financially my life improved, spiritually my life improved, commercially my life improved, with my friends, with my situation where I lived. Everything. I started to be blessed. This string of blessings. And it hasn't stopped since. If I'm in the employ of God, then there is a return. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying if I go to church 3 times on Sunday, he's going to answer more of my prayers and I'm going to be blessed. I'm not saying that. But there is a reaction. I serve God, and the closer I draw myself to God, it seems that all my blessings are lined up. And as we understand it, all the blessings that God has got for you, he's given you. They're already lined up. And so if we do things, we can get in the way of those blessings.
Yeah.
But God has got great things for us, and all we've got to do is, if we align ourselves and serve and worship Him, we go and collect them on the way. So, we get time off. You have holidays with God. If you are in His employ, you could then go and say, take a week off, go have a nice holiday abroad, and God doesn't stop loving you. You don't feel any less blessed. It's like a paid holiday. However, if you took 6 months off, like you did from work, in the first couple of weeks would be paid holiday, you'd still feel blessed and go. But 6 months down the line, you're not going to feel that close to God, are you? You've slipped into. You can have the holiday, but it's unpaid.
Yeah.
You have healthcare when you're in the employ of God. Are we healed by His name, by His stripes? How many healthcare plans do you know that can raise you from the dead? Not too many at all. And best of all, we have the ultimate pension plan with God. This isn't a little bungalow by the sea. This is a mansion in heaven where you'll never cry, where you'll never weep, where there will be no pain, no anger, and no broken hearts. The ultimate pension plan for the ultimate relationship. There we go. Tying 2 weeks in one go. Okay. Just before we go on, I wanted to talk to you about sneaky slavery. Because things are obvious to us. We know not to get obsessed by money. We know not to become a slave to our job. We may not have known not to become a slave to God. But the things that we know not to be a slave to drink and things like that, there's the obvious. But there's something called sneaky slavery going on. And I'll show you how it works. If I work in my job, I used to love my job. My job was fantastic. They used to really look after me. It's a great place to work, and I felt really rewarded for serving in that place. But after a while, I start to feel like a slave. After a while, I start to feel like they're taking the mick, really. I feel like they're asking me to do things. It's a bit hard work, but I'm the only one that feels that way. Maybe 1 or 2 others, but mostly everyone's happy. I start to feel like a slave. But it's not that I've become a slave to my job. What's happened is I've become a slave to money. And the job is just the thing that gives me money. So now I feel that I owe this job everything. And all I'm thinking to myself is, if I had a different job, if I wasn't a slave, if I had a good job, then, I would be happy. And how many people do you know that said, if I had a new house, a new car, new friends, if I wasn't enslaved to where I'm enslaved, I would be happy. But what's actually going on is you become a slave to money. And it's just being transposed over to where you're at this moment in time. Taking that on, imagine if your dream and ambition was to be a singer. Just to sing was your joy in life. And you imagine for a second that if my children said to me, I want to be a singer, I would say the same as everybody else. You'll never make any money at that. You're not going to do very well. Only a few people make it, just a real select few. You're really going to struggle. And then they'll say, no, I really want to be a singer, I really want to make it. And, I would probably take a different tack. But you can imagine all those people out there that want to be singers and things like that, and their parents are saying, look, please don't, you'll never make it. Take that on 20 years. And they're busting their guts still trying to make it. Yeah. You've seen these on Britain's Got Talent and Pop Idol and things like that. And they're busting their guts. And they're so desperate to make it. And you can see that they're miserable. This is my last chance. They've sung in clubs. They've sung all over. They've really become what they feel is enslaved to their ambition and their dream. But it's not. It's those few words all those years ago that spiked their pride. They forgot, they don't care whether they sing to 6 people or 600 people or 60,000 people, it doesn't matter. They enjoy just singing. Yeah. They enjoy just mixing up songs, different types of styles, just singing with friends, 1, 2, 3. It was just, that was the joy. That was the thing that they loved to serve. But now they're a slave to their pride. They have to make it to prove their parents wrong. And so again, I have to check myself sometimes when I'm dealing with my own kids that you're not, building into them something that, maybe a cause of pride later on. Okay. You think you've become a slave to God. This Christian life is becoming a bit hard work. And you see this 1,000 times. How many people do you know in churches a problem that has suddenly said, do you know what, I used to be really close to God, but do you know what, it's all getting a bit much, it's a bit on top, I'm sort of there all the time, and I just feel like I can't do enough, and you're getting burnout all over the place, and people are really sort of, you're not really being helpful, you don't feel like you're serving, you're not getting your employ back from it, you're not getting anything back from it. But we know God doesn't enslave you.
Yeah.
You can't become a slave to God. So what's happening? God has forgiven you. He has forgiven you for every sin you've ever committed, gonna commit, and will commit in the future. So you can't be a slave to God. Maybe you've not forgiven yourself. Maybe you're a slave to guilt. You still feel guilty about your past, who you were, what you've done, what you did last week, the way that you swore that time when you stubbed your toe, and you still feel guilty, and you're transposing it over to God.
Yeah.
See, Jesus died on the cross of Calvary to break us free from sin. Not to pick up slavery. He didn't set us free from those chains for us to pick them back up and be enslaved again. He didn't take us out of Egypt to enslave us in the desert.
Yeah.
Jesus went to the cross, beaten, abused, rejected, vilified, to break the bondage that was upon us. We were chained by this world, by our own actions, by mankind's mistakes. But he wore our guilt. And he went to the cross and he paid the debt that he did not owe for a debt that we couldn't pay. And at his last moments, the devil tried to throw one more chain on him. At his last moments, in his last breaths, he tried to say to him, whisper in his ear, look how they reject you.
Yeah.
Look what they've done to you. And in his last breaths he said, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. He broke the last chain.
Yeah.
And when death came upon him, he broke that too. But if we look at sort of how to serve, we go to people's houses and we try and serve them. And I've got to say that if you go to someone's houses and you expect something back from someone, if you go to someone's house and you expect them to be a better person, if they're depressed or if they're negative or if they're anything, and you go and you try and help them, you try and do these helpful activities to bring them round, and you're expecting them to give you something back from it, you'll only help them for a few days.
Yeah.
It won't last at all. If you do it for God's purposes, to serve God, you will go around and you will help them for much longer, weeks, months even, maybe even years.
Yeah.
But when they get no closer to God, you will stop. You think, well, maybe my time, maybe my efforts, maybe my service for the kingdom is better spent in other places. Maybe I should spend my time. If you're doing it for God, the minute it doesn't help God or bring them closer to God, you will then give it up.
Yeah.
But when Jesus washed the feet of his disciples, when he scrubbed them down, it was quite difficult. It's not a very pleasant thing to do. By today's standard, it's one of those things that we're talking about being a servant. If you say, love Jesus and you can wash people's feet, I don't know what would be more disturbing. If somebody came to me and said, I'd like to wash your feet, I'd go, no, I don't think so. Mind you, it'd probably be a bit more disturbing the other way around. If I went to someone and says, Jesus has told me to wash your feet, and they went, yes, please come in, that would be just as bad as well. But back in that day, there were no cars or bikes or horses and things like that. I mean, there were horses, but you had to be pretty wealthy, and donkeys and things like that. Your feet were how you got about. And if your feet were stuffed, you were stuffed, pretty much. It wasn't really a good thing. So what Jesus said is he said, look, you might have had a hard day. Let me wash the dust from your day. Let me wash all that hardship away. Let me make sure that your equipment is in top condition to face the day tomorrow. Let me serve you in a way that makes sure that your most important feature to get about doing your life is ready to face what is to come. So when we serve people, and when we go in and we share and we in people's lives in this community and in the next, if we just go in with the attitude is, let me make you as good as I possibly can make you for tomorrow. Let me take the worst of today and wash it away and put you in the best frame of mind to go. If we go just to wash their feet rather than to serve them or serve God, we will start to change lives. And then there is no time limit on what we're trying to do. But how does it all tie in with 1 Samuel 17? Because we've gone a bit sort of off. So we're going to go back to 1 Samuel 17. Because David was after God's own heart. So if he was God's greatest servant, then we should follow his example on how to serve. So we're going to pick it back up in 1 Samuel 17, but this time we're going to go from 34. And David said to Saul, "Your servant kept his father's sheep, and where there came a lion or again a bear and took a lamb out of the flock, I went after it and I smote it and delivered the lamb out of its mouth. And when it arose against me, I caught it by its beard and I smote it and killed it. Your servant killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them. For he has defied the armies of the living God." David said, "The Lord who delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine." David, as a servant, served his father. He served his brothers. He served his king. He served his fathers in the field as a shepherd looking after his flocks. He served his brothers by going backwards and forwards. And he served his king. He said, "I can do this for you. I can kill this Philistine." He said, the thing with David is he had no idea that he was in service. He had no idea at all of what he was serving or serving for. He just served. He was just being obedient. And that's why God liked this man's heart. He thought, I could use him. He became a person who waited on others, and he became a person who did activities to help others. He was never dominated by anyone or anything. He was never a slave. But what he didn't know was when he was serving is that he was being sharpened. He was being strengthened. He was being fully equipped and made confident. He'd taken on the attributes of all the things that he'd served in the fields, fighting the bears and the lions. He'd learned to be organised. He'd learned to be helpful, to be graceful, to be understanding. He'd learned to be strong. His muscles had got stronger as he'd served. And when the moment came, when he saw that giant blaspheming against God, he was able. He was equipped. He was strong enough. But he didn't think any of those things. All he thought was, I'm not having that. I'm not having that. We go out there and we see people that are hurting, we see crimes, we see injustices, we see people that are against the God, and we just think, I'm not having that. And what we don't realise is that we're built, we're strengthened, we are already equipped. We don't need 7 weeks in the army. There is something inside us that was inside him that says, I'm not having that. It's then he found, and we found, we have all the training necessary to be the right person at the right time, to destroy any agent of darkness or any plan of the enemy. And in that moment, when David won a nation, when he won a kingdom, when he won the hearts of the soldiers and of the people of God, that's when his world changed, and so did God's kingdom here on earth. We don't know when our moments will come. We don't know what we say will change things for the good. And we don't feel sometimes like we've got all the equipment necessary. But we are the right people at the right time, with the right equipment and the right training. You know, whether there's one of us or 10 of us, or 200 of us or 2,000 of us, if we're going to change things, We have to have this heart to serve, but not for ourselves, not even for the kingdom, and not for God, but do it because we love people, and it's who He's making us to be. Just a willingness to serve. Service isn't that man serving the old Lord in the castle at the top of a hill. True service is to soar like an eagle. To do all things in Christ who strengthens us. In Jesus' name.
Amen.